Yeah.
Yes!
Ohayo gozaimasu. Welcome and Happy New Year. Happy 2026 to each and every one of you. I hope your new year has gotten off to a very good start. And just in advance of a slew of new topics and new videos, I just wanted to draw your attention, if you haven't had your attention drawn before, to a site, a collective known as Film Secession. I've just been engaging with this through my work with the New York-based film magazine Cineast, and there is currently, if you join up with this site, some great opportunities to see and to reflect on and to see reflected on some of Japanese cinema's glorious sort of past auteurs, people like Naruse and Ozu, and to see them in a slightly different light, to have some of their lesser known earlier works championed and indeed presented for you. There have been occasions now and again, certainly in the UK, to see some of Ozu's earliest films. They've tended to be packaged either together in a DVD or Blu-ray release of 3 or 4 films, or in the case of Ozu in particular, they've been paired with much more famous films. Ozu's later work, his work from the late 40s and throughout the 1950s and early 60s, which is fine. I mean, that's an interesting and valid and valuable way of presenting these films. But certainly in the case of the latter, they tend to be regarded, even if sort of unconsciously, as adjuncts to the great later works. There's a sense, I think, offered by these releases that there is a kind of a teleology of Ozu's or of a director's career, whereby they would be increasingly getting better, increasingly refining their work, increasingly developing and strengthening their craft. And there are obvious truths to that, and I think I don't want to dissuade anyone entirely from thinking that. I just want to urge a note of caution that in seeing everything as being sort of geared towards the intermittent or incremental development of a master whose mastery would at some point in the future be given to us, be bestowed on us, would kind of explode, if you like, for all of our enjoyment and reflection. I think when you have someone like Ozu, you really need to look, I think, a little bit more carefully at the earlier works and not to see them as the sort of staging posts of a career, if you like, to see them in the context in which they were made, and to think about them a little differently. I think, again, with Ozu, because his style was and remains to a large extent so unique, there is and has been a tendency to look at earlier films and to kind of see where things like pillow shots or his 360-degree shooting space or his static low height camera, it begins creeping into his work. And I think this really does all but dehumanize his films. So the chance to watch earlier films, in the case of the new issue, as it were, of Film Secession, that film is That Night's Wife, an early crime drama. You really need to see these in a different context and be sort of purged of this understandable mindset, but I think very limiting mindset. To this end, there's a useful sort of feature with Koreeda Hirokatsu talking about some of the films and filmmakers associated with the golden eras of Japanese cinema, and that pertain to this particular issue of Film Secession. So he talks about Ozu and particularly Naruse. Naruse has always been the director lauded the most by Koreeda, the director who he regards as, quote, his master. And it's really interesting to have this opportunity to sort of recontextualize these films, to see them outside of the sort of frames of reference that I think have begun to hold them back, to constrict them, to bind them. And I think there was a big Naruse retrospective last year, which I covered a lot in videos. And I think one of the interesting features of that, one of the interesting opportunities of that, is to try and see a body of work in its entirety, to not have isolated releases that tend to sort of point the way forward, if you like. I've been guilty of that, and I'm sure, many other critics have. But the more I return to earlier works from directors who would go on to be so influential, iconic, canonical, the more I think that we need to find a way of viewing these earlier works through a different prism and a different lens. And I think this very useful engagement and recontextualization, to a certain extent, by Film Secession is worthy of your attention. So do have a look. I will post a link below for you to follow, and let me know what you think. Certainly if you join up, if you watch the films, watch the features, let me know what you think. Okay, as I said, will be with you again very soon with some new content, with lots of new different videos on a host of new topics. In the meantime, follow me on X at AdamBingham01 or online at culturaljapan.com. And I look forward to speaking with you very soon.